To be cliché and to quote JFK, we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. So, since it is, as you normie folk would so say, spooky season, yet again, let's begin today by demystifying some of our nation's longest held traditions. I definitely need a drink for this one. This tequila is courtesy of my longtime high school friend Frankie, who brought this back from Mexico for my birthday party this previous year. Yeah. And so, if my love is to be condemned and scorned, then perhaps in hellfire we'll have a bit more fun. Cheers. Delicious. The way this shadow casts is dark and deep. However, a capacity for light I equally keep. Seemingly psychic scared you more than it should. I would have foregone all this misfortune if I could. A chill in the air as the leaves start to fall. Some sort of story for you to make sense of it all. Man is a gregarious animal in a far more comprehensive sense than any of the lower animals. Each community not only combines as a whole for mutual aid and assistance, but within every civilized community are numerous minor aggregations, wheels within wheels, combined for more specialized purposes of mutual benefit and designed to cover almost all the needs and wishes of man, which can be helped by association. There are numerous societies for political, literary, scientific, social, and recreative purposes, whose object is to aid each other in amusement, the acquisition of knowledge, the gaining of public rights, etc. But none of these are included within our present purpose, which is confined to the consideration of societies organized to aid their members in gaining the means of livelihood, and in most of which pecuniary help in case of sickness or death is a leading feature. Societies of this character have existed from a remote period. In ancient times they can be traced in Greece and were numerous in the Roman Empire, their methods and aims being not unlike those of modern societies. In the medieval period, the principle of mutual benefit association was active. The trade guilds, the most important of the associations of that era, were numerous and powerful, and in certain localities went so far beyond their original function as to exercise a controlling influence upon government. These associations differed radically from the trade unions of today. They were organized not against capital, but against labor competition. Labor in those days was its own employer. The masters had begun life as mechanics, and the interest of one was the interest of all. The guilds established rigid rules to prevent an overflow of labor from without into their organizations, and with such effect as to divide the lower rank of society into two classes, one of masters, mechanics, and apprentices in the trade guilds, one of laborers, tramps, and beggars who were refused admittance to these guilds. It was an artificial state of society, but it long held its own opposition to the force of the natural law of industry. The guilds were important institutions in that era, and accumulated property, much of which still exists. Through the societies themselves, though the societies themselves have been reduced to mere shadows and exist simply to take care of this property, Pecuniary aid in case of distress was a feature of the guilds and was a leading characteristic of certain charitable and social societies which existed at the same time, and which approached our modern beneficial societies in character and purposes, the supply of a burial fund being one of their leading features. There is, however, a definite line of division between medieval and modern times in respect to the principles of labor association. The rise of the factory system and the employment of great sums of money in single manufacturing enterprises gave the death blow to the guilds. They vanished as vital organizations and have been succeeded by the trade unions, in which the principle of exclusion of outside labor still exists, but only as a minor object, the major object being that of preventing the encroachment of capital. The contest is now for an equitable division between labor and capital of the profits arising from manufacturing enterprise, this being one of the most difficult questions to settle that has arisen in modern history. By the side of these trade unions have arisen many mutual aid or friendly societies, as they are called in England, which have no connection with the labor question, but limit their purposes to the single one of pecuniary assistance in case of accident, sickness, or death. In these societies, the members make weekly or monthly contributions to a common fund, accumulating a sum which is paid out again in definite weekly amounts in case of sickness or accident to any member, and to aid in the burial of members in case of death. In other cases, there is no payment except a given sum for burial, while some mechanics' societies have a fund to pay for loss of tools by accident or otherwise. As trade unions are all new societies, none of them being continuations of the guilds, so the same may be said of the mutual aid societies, with one exception, that of the Freemasons, which alone has come down to us from medieval times. The Freemasons is the strongest and most influential of modern secret societies, and possess a very intricate organization, the main body being supplemented by higher degrees, some of which are almost distinct societies in themselves. Next in importance comes the Independent Order of Oddfellows, a society of English origin, but which, like the Masons, has become very strong within the United States. The exact date of its origin is not known, the first trace of its existence being in 1745, when it seems to have constituted a secret society for convivial purposes, with a small fund for the relief of poor and burial of deceased members. About the same time, another important English society, the Ancient Order of Foresters, came into existence. This is today of considerable strength in England, and has established itself to some extent in the United States. The Order of Druids is another English society of some strength, while several others might be named of minor importance. In the last century, these societies had not the definite organization and purposes of more recent times, their beneficial feature being of secondary importance. It was in 1812 that the Oddfellows Society reorganized itself for the purpose of mutual assistance, in prescribed sums in case of sickness and in the defraying of funeral expenses. In imitation of the Freemasons, it devised passwords and signs for the mutual recognition of members, and to prevent imposture, established new rules of order and better defined conditions of management, and assumed its present name, the Independent Order of Oddfellows. This new departure was a distinct advance on the informal workings of the preceding benevolent and charitable institutions, and gave the cue to the organization of the more recent societies. The Freemasons alone retained the generalized conditions of pecuniary aid of the earlier period, other societies binding themselves to the payment of fixed sums in case of sickness or death. The first governmental recognition of these associations was made in England in 1793, when an act was passed designed to place them on a firm footing by giving them a legal status, permitting them to hold property and to sue and to be sued in courts of law, This act was repealed in 1829, and a new law passed, which has been succeeded by several others, the latest being that of 1875. This was published in 1894, so... Of the English societies, the Masons and the Oddfellows are both largely represented within the United States. The first lodge of the American Masons was organized in Philadelphia in 1731, and in 1733 one was instituted in Boston. Of the former, Benjamin Franklin was the worshipful master in 1734. There are more Masons in the United States today than in any other country in the world, their strength here being over 600,000. The Order of Oddfellows was brought to America in 1819, when a lodge was founded in Baltimore by some members of the Manchester Union. It grew rapidly, and in 1842 the American branch cut loose from the parent society of Great Britain, in consequence of certain differences in their working rules. Since that period, the society has flourished in the United States, and is strong numerically and financially at the present day. Its membership in this country being over 600,000, with nearly 10,000 lodges. In addition to the societies of English origin, there are a considerable number of American institutions. I think that's supposed to be plural, but some of them of national importance. The Knights of Python was founded in Washington in 1864, its expressed object being peace on earth and goodwill towards men, and to disseminate the great principles of friendship, charity, and benevolence. It became a popular order and has grown rapidly, having in 1885 more than 2,000 subordinate lodges and over 160,000 members. A society of earlier origin is the Red Men, in whose lodge meetings the customs and dress of the American Indians are simulated. This has not grown in later years as rapidly as some other societies, but is today a prosperous condition. Another of the older American societies is the Order of American Mechanics. Some societies of more recent institution, however, have surpassed in popularity those older ones, and notably the Knights of the Golden Eagle, which has at present 281 castles or lodges in Pennsylvania alone. Of recent years, the disposition to found new societies has been active, and many have come into being, among which may be named the Knights of Malta, the Senate of Sparta, the Knights of the Mystic Chain, the Legion of the Red Cross, the Royal Arcanum, the Brotherhood of the Union, the United Workmen, the Patriotic Sons of America, the Knights of Friendship, the Universal Order of Security, and Order of the Iron Hall. This is not offered as a full list. Other societies could be named, while there are many which are as yet of local importance only. But in the list of important mutual aid societies of the United States must be included the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization composed of the veteran soldiers of the Civil War, and one that is worthy of the highest respect of the American people. These various societies are differently constituted and have different methods of beneficial procedure. In some, new members are examined by a competent physician, and others, the dues vary in accordance with the age of the member. In certain societies of recent origin, payment benefits are made only in case of death, a sum being paid sufficient for the burial of the deceased member and the temporary support of his family. In these, the members are assessed for dues only when the death of a fellow member takes place, and the dues vary with the number of deaths. These societies are conducted on the life insurance principle, and some of the older societies have adopted a similar principle, permitting their members to insure their lives for fixed sums by making payments in accordance therewith. One recent society which combines the payment of sick benefits, always with the traffic, where was I? These societies are conducted on the life insurance principle, and some of the older societies have adopted a similar principle, permitting their members to insure their lives for fixed sums by making payments in accordance therewith. One recent society which combines the payment of sick benefits with the life insurance is that known as the Iron Hall, whose working principle has been adopted by other organizations known as the Order of Tonti and the Sexennial League. Numerous other societies of local interest might be named, all based on the useful principle of aiding their members in seasons of distress. Each new society seeks to afford the most help for the least payment, and it must be confessed that much progress has been made in the beneficial management of society funds. In addition to the mutual aid societies, organized expressly for charitable and insurance purposes, there are numerous associations which add to this aim, others of equal importance. There are two particular classes of these societies, the labor unions and the temperance associations, both of which call for some consideration. With the growth of the factory system of labor, as we have already said, trade unions took the place formerly occupied by the guilds, which had long ceased to be vital organizations. The combination of working men in opposition to capital began in England in the latter part of the last century, particular opposition being shown at that time to the introduction of new labor-saving inventions. There is no evidence that any such societies existed in America during the colonial period. Home labor was then the rule, and there were no large collections of mechanics in industrial centers. But by the opening of the 19th century, the modern conditions of labor were well established, and the long conflict between labor and capital had begun. It's still going to this day. Something like a strike took place in New York in 1802, when the sailors of that port quit work to enforce an advance of wages from $10 to $14 a month. Organizations of labor appeared at the same time, beginning in local combinations of single trades. The New York Society of Journeymen Shipwrights was formed in 1803, and a Society of House Carpenters in 1806. In 1817, the New York Typographical Society is spoken of as a strong institution. Yet, up to 1825, there is little trace of such societies outside of the state of New York. After 1825, labor showed a disposition to combine on a larger scale. The local unions increased in number, and the idea of national unions arose. The two cities most prominent in this movement were Boston and New York. In 1833, an address was made before the General Trades Unions of the city of New York, the first indication we have of the effort to combine all the workmen of one locality. A premature attempt to form a national trades union was made in 1835, though with no definite result, and it was not till after 1850 that any effort to organize national unions became successful. Of these, the earliest was the National Typographical Union, traceable to 1850, but not permanently organized until 1852. In 1869, its name was changed to the International Typographical Union, with the purpose of including the printers of Canada. This is the oldest American trades union now in existence, all the earlier ones having vanished. The Hatters combined in 1854, the Iron and Steel Workers in 1858, the Iron Molders and the Machinists and Blacksmiths in 1859, and it is said that 26 trades had national organizations in 1860. These national unions were followed by the so-called international societies, most of which, however, are international only in name. In 1864, the Grand International Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers was formed, and that of the cigar makers in the same year. So, societies of this national character were formed with rapidity after that period. Until today, there is scarcely a distinct trade without such an organization. The next step in the process of combination was the effort to form a national organization of all of the trades. This was taken in 1866, when the National Labor Union was formed. It grew rapidly in numbers for a few years, and then declined and died out. A more successful effort was made in 1869. On Thanksgiving Day of that year, Uriah S. Stevens, a Philadelphia tailor, called a meeting which proved the initial step in the organization of the Knights of Labor, a society which in 19 years has grown into the most powerful labor organization of modern times. It differs from all previous labor societies, including all branches of skilled and unskilled labor, in its organization. Its express purposes being mutual aid of members, protection against the encroachments of capital, and the attainment of reforms in industrial relations. This society admits all men to membership except bankers, brokers, professional gamblers, lawyers, and liquor makers and sellers, and is the first of such societies to reorganize the claim of unskilled labor to the same protection which skilled labor has so long possessed. Other general societies on a different basis have been instituted from time to time, constituting federations of labor unions, delegate bodies to which each subordinate union sends a representative. Such labor congresses now exist in all the large cities of the Union. In 1881, there was organized in Pittsburgh on a national basis a federation of organized trades and labor unions, on the model of the Trade Union Congress of England. Just how many persons are included in these American trade societies is not known. It cannot be less than 1 million, and may be much more. In 1880, according to the census report, there were 2,440 such societies in the United States, representing 132 industries. Of these, 1/4 of the whole, 620, were located in the state of Pennsylvania, while no other state had much over 200. This is a natural result of the great importance of Pennsylvania in the mechanical industries. The same state leads in benevolent and beneficial organizations, probably from the same cause. The societies above described, the strictly beneficial, and in some cases the labor associations, often the only savings banks of working men, being accident, sick, and life insurance companies, in which the small weekly dues paid by the members are frequently their sole provisions against future want. These dues are usually from 12 to 15 cents per week. The trade societies protect their members against reduction of wages and pay them benefits during strikes, thus serving a doubly useful purpose. In this connection, it is necessary to mention the socialist societies, which have gained so unenviable a reputation in recent years. Of these, there are 3 in recent years. 3 in the United States. The Socialistic Labor Party, the International Working People's Association, and the International Workmen's Association. It is the last named of these which has rendered itself so objectionable by its open advocacy of anarchical violence and by the murderous use of dynamite as an exemplification of its principles. It is chiefly composed of the most turbulent element of European labor, disposed to put in practice here methods devised against the oppressive governments of their native soil, but in no sense applicable to American institutions. The others named are to some extent anarchical in their principles, but have not yet proved so in their practice. Of the remaining societies in which the mutual aid of members is a prominent feature, that of the grangers or patrons of husbandry has been already treated. Its purposes are largely social but mainly protective, including the purchase of goods and machinery at producers' prices and mutual defense against railroad discrimination. We have yet to mention the temperance societies, in which a crusade against liquor is the principal feature, though in some cases combined with financial aid to members. The associated temperance movement began early in the century and grew very active after 1825, but the existing orders of temperance did not come into being until 1842, when the Sons of Temperance Society was organized. In the same year, there was introduced into the United States an English society, the Independent Order of... Let me see if I remembered how to do this earlier, and I don't know if I will now. Rechabites, which had existed in 1835. It spread with great rapidity in this country, and had at one time more than 100,000 members, but has now but a small fraction of that number. The Sons of Temperance grew with yet greater rapidity, and in 1850 had 232,233 members. It declined greatly during the Civil War, but it is now growing again, and in 1888 numbered 78,913 members. It is a secret society, admits to membership women as well as men, and colored as well as white men, and is beneficiary in its workings. This pioneer society was followed in 1851 by the Order of Good Templars, which left out the mutual aid principle and made temperance reform its sole purpose. This society grew very rapidly, extended like the Sons of Temperance to England and other countries, and has lodges now in every country of the civilized world. In 1875, it had in all 735,000 members. Since then, it has declined in numbers, its strength in 1888 being 483,103 members. Women are eligible to membership, and there is a juvenile branch having in 1888 a membership of 139,951. Juvenile temperance has made great progress in other societies, as the Cadets of Temperance and the English Band of Hope Union, which is said to have over 800,000 members in Great Britain and Ireland. Other American societies are the Templars of Honor and Temperance, organized in 1845, the Independent Order of Good Samaritans, and Daughters of Samaria, organized in 1847. The Royal Templars of Temperance, organized in 1869, and a considerable number of smaller societies of local interest only. Temperance societies exist in many churches, the most publicly prominent of them being the Catholic Total Abstinence Beneficial Society, which has done great good in its crusade against strong drink. Of recent societies, however, the most important is the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which has been exceedingly active in the cause of temperance reform, and has very recently combined many of the juvenile temperance organizations into a single society, the Loyal Temperance Legion, whose membership is estimated at 500,000. There are other temperance societies of recent organizations, such as the Law and Order Society, the Reform Clubs, etc. But as these last named societies do not belong to the beneficiary class, they need not be further mentioned. What has been above said is sufficient to show that the idea of association for mutual benefit has had a remarkable development in the United States during the 19th century, and that at present the membership of such societies includes a very considerable portion of our own population. It might be shown also that these societies have made no less progress in their methods of beneficiary procedure and the skillful handling of their funds. The experience of life insurance companies having proved highly useful to the mutual aid societies. As at present constituted, in fact, every degree of progress in this direction can be traced in the workings of the several societies. In the Freemasons, for instance, we have a retention of the medieval general and non-obligatory system of charity. Other societies retain the early methods of sick benefits, while still others have introduced life insurance as an important feature of their beneficial methods. Through the legality of this attempt has been, although the legality of this attempt has been seriously questioned. Others add to the mutual aid idea purposes of self-defense against the encroachments of capital, and of aggression against the liquor interest and the ravages of intemperance. The mutual aid feature of these societies is of the utmost importance and value to the industrial portions of our population, they forming in a majority of cases the only bulwark of their members against want in case of sickness and accident, and assurance of relief to their families in case of death. When I was younger, these things always interested and intrigued me, so I would always peer and pry and look. But, you know, really nothing is ever as it seems completely. And the good vibes of humanity, despite in fall and winter and, you know, these more dwindling seasons, it's like life just continues to flow. It really is a wheel within a wheel within a wheel, just like my earrings. See? It's just how it goes. So lots of love to all of you out there in the universe. What? Did you expect it to look like this? Oh my god. Oh no. Happy Halloween. I do dress like this sometimes. Don't tell me.